to the quarterly review meeting for the Fairfield Board of Finance. Everybody please rise. I'm going to ask Mr. Becker to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we're a little short-staffed. We have some people with some business conflicts tonight. Our agenda for our quarterly review meeting is to hear and discuss the cost-benefit analysis of various town electrical savings projects. Welcome. The next item, but I'm going to ask that we move it, is to hear, consider, and act upon a request from the Chief Fiscal Officer to approve Schedules A, B, C, D, E, and F, carrying over funds from encumbrances and reappropriations as of June 30th, 2017. I'm going to ask that we move that down in the agenda until we hear the results of operations for the evening for the fiscal year 2017. Then we're going to hear, consider, and act upon a request from the Chief Fiscal Officer to approve transfers. We're going to review the state of the pension and OPEB funds. I think Mr. Mayor is going to speak to that this evening because we have a conflict with Mr. Vahey tonight, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Retirement Investment Board meeting.
Then we're going to do the Board of Education and the town financial position as of year end. Then we're going to review the potential operational adjustments for 2018 to support the town's budget due to concerns related to the continuing uncertainty of the state grants, the state budget, and then we're going to review and discuss the town's bonding requirements. This is the holdover item from last week where the schedules have been redone, correct? All right. Any questions, comments, concerns from board members?
Yeah, I don't know if you were clear. You want to move 2 and 3.
We're going to move 2 and 3 up, if that's okay with everybody. Or rather, we're going to move 2 and 3 down, and we're going to move 5 and 6 before them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right. So item number 1 is to hear and discuss the cost-benefit analysis of the various town electrical savings projects. Welcome. This is an item that comes, I believe this comes all the way back from our budget discussions where we're discussing all our infrastructure and the various energy savings projects that we put in place over the last number of years. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. I'm here. Thank you. All right. All right, again, we can start with the oldest one of the 50 kW cogeneration unit at the police department. That continues to operate as it's supposed to for the last 5 years. We have a 20-year guarantee that it will operate that way. We pay for. Every 5 years, that equipment is replaced as part of that warranty, so it continues to run at a high efficiency. Again, it costs us about 7.3 cents to make that power versus 17.6 cents this year to buy it from on the market. So this year we saved about almost $40,000 in operating costs. Then there's some of the natural gas. Some of the heat is used to supplant the natural gas to provide heat for the building. Mm-hmm. Again, that's 5,000 square feet, but that's cubic feet. That should have been more like 20,000. That did not working the way it's supposed to be. However, EarthCore, our energy consultants, found a way use some of the waste heat to provide hot water, saving another $4,000 in natural gas costs. Because right now, that police station's boiler runs year-round in the summer just to provide hot water for showers, which is crazy. So EarthCore, our guy, has been able to take that out and just use the waste heat from the generator and shut down the boiler in the summertime. So that's an added benefit we found.
So net, what are we saving on this?
Net, it looks like about $48,000 a year.
So we're saving about 48. What did we pay for it, I guess, is what I'm asking.
I think we paid about $400,000 for it, but it was a 100% grant. You know, it was I forgot the name of the grant now, but it was 100% paid for by the federal government.
Okay, so $48K a year. And Mr. Mayor, we're seeing that in our operating savings in the financial statements? How do we see that? How does this show up in the financial statements?
There's been no definitive analysis attempted or therefore accomplished with respect to the potential or the actual savings. The you know, the funds come in as a grant or a loan. Um, The process through the town bodies, it's approved, gets installed. You have variables such as weather and et cetera. So some of the items to try to evaluate specifically would be difficult, but nobody in the finance department has done anything to try to compare actual to prior or.
I guess what I'm saying, though, is we're going to be going through, I understand what you just said because of all the other variables, but we're going to be going through a bunch of projects here, right? And what I would expect is that year over year, our energy costs overall, it might not come down dollar for dollar due to the variables that you're talking about, but we would see a substantial savings, correct?
Right, we track the KWH, so we know how many kilowatt hours we're buying. I mean, an example is in the first 10 years of these programs, we saved about 2.5 million kilowatt hours. Town construction projects added 2.6 million.
Right,
So it looked like we didn't save anything. Now, there hasn't been that much added, but like on this one, we know what to generate our output. I get it every month, and we track it month by month, so we know how much power it's making and how much it's saving. It's the same thing with the solar. We get a monthly statement from them. We know exactly what it's producing, and we can compare that to the old budget. Now, there's some variables, as Bob has mentioned. Could be weather. If it's too hot, you're not going to save the same amount of money. But you know that what we're buying at 10 cents or 8 cents, we're not paying 17 cents for it, so that's a savings.
Right.
And that we do track, and I think I included some of that with the background here.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can we continue and go through the water pollution control facility?
Yeah, the 1.4 megawatt photovoltaic facility on the landfill is finally operating. It took 2 years to get permits from DEP to get it going because there was endangered species, migratory endangered species on that site. They were able to work through it with them and at a great expense to the company, and they didn't try and pass it on to us, but they finally got their permits after 2 years. It's not as big as it was going to be. Originally, we were going to have the solar for Public Works Garage and the senior center on the landfill, but this is the most we could get working around the endangered species. So that took 2 years. Then it took another year to get the UI to approve, which the UI is hard to work with in terms of getting an operation, then another 3 or 4 months for the town permitting. So it took over 3 years just to get permitting and 6 months for construction. So it's now up and operating, and I don't have the first month's figures yet, but I will next quarter if we need that.
Okay.
And that'll save $100,000, at 10.7 cents a kilowatt hour. The biggest thing is the fuel cell should be operating by the end of the year. Again, that's all tied into the microgrid that's being installed there. The fuel cell people had a problem integrating with the microgrid. Their fuel cell had never done that before, so they spent 6 months and finally been able to do that, so that they will tie into the microgrid. Their problem was that their fuel cell did not operate in island mode, which is when UI power is gone. Well,
Right.
it has to operate in island mode. That's what it's doing here, is to replace UI. So they were able to do that, and now they're ready to go, and I think by November that'll be up and operating. And that's going to make close to 4 million kilowatt hours a year. You'll only save $60,000 in electric costs because it's 1.5 cents discount over town prices. But the big thing it saves is natural gas. The microturbines we had down there, 12-year-old microturbines, were costing us $228,000 a year for natural gas. And they were becoming so efficient it was cheaper to buy electricity than to make it. Well, the fuel cell people are taking the whole obligation to buy the natural gas. We have a simple power purchase agreement with them. They will buy the gas. So we're saving not just $228,000, but that's on an interruptible rate. If we had gone to the microgrid, they would have to convert to a fixed rate, and then the cost of that natural gas then would be like $350,000. So there's enormous savings on natural gas of the fuel cell, much more so than electric, which is bonus for us. The fuel cell also going to provide its waste heat for the compost facility, which has no waste heat now, would have been a cost of the facility plan going forward, going down there, of about $125,000 and another $30,000 avoided cost for natural gas.
Okay.
We'll get to the point in a year or two where the water pollution control will be a zero net energy facility. We will be buying no power and maybe no natural gas to run that. We'll be doing it all on site. So That's one of my goals.
Very nice.
That's great.
And we should see that perhaps next year, or that's the goal for next
Yes,
year?
yes. And it'll show up in next year's budget, too, pretty easily, huh? Now, the other solar projects, again, we're always, they never go as fast as we think they're gonna go because of permitting and interconnect agreement with UI and everything else. But right now, they're only making about 700,000 kWh and with $67,000 in savings. But we have 9 new solar projects that will be operation by the end of 2018. And that'll add another $555,000 kWh and $49,000 in savings. Now, I expect these to be up and operating before that, but I learned my lesson. I'm going to say the end of 2018.
Mm-hmm. 67, okay.
On these solar projects, where do we have the existing solar projects now?
Didn't I? Did I include it? Maybe I didn't.
Both high schools, right?
Let's see.
We
We
know
have
they're
them at
award.
both high schools on the roof. We have them and both high schools in the parking lot. We have one at Fairfield Woods Middle School, and there's 2 more going on Fairfield Woods Middle School. So as the roof gets replaced, we keep adding solar to it. So there'll be 3 on Fairfield Woods. There's one on Dwight School, there's one on Riverfield School, there's one on Mill Hill School. All the other roofs are not, are too old to put solar on. As their roofs get replaced, solar can be added to it. But you need a 20-year roof warranty, or you're not going to put a 20-year solar project on it. So that's going through there. So those schools are pretty well taken. The main problem we had was trying to get one at the railroad station. Of course, that collapsed. So that would have run 90% of the middle school there, too. On the town side, we have them on the firehouse, number 1, Jennings Firehouse, Operation Hope, the tennis courts, the ball field down there, Jennings Beach, the recreation center, 2 on the canine shelter now, 1 on the conservation garage, 1 on the transfer station, 1 up at Smith Richardson on its garage, and there's a half a dozen more that are scheduled to go in permit. We're looking for the new fire training center. We're looking for the new Penfield.
What Penfield have? Doesn't Penfield have solar panels?
It doesn't have solar now.
Oh, it doesn't.
It had an old solar clamp, but it expired because we have one for both the new fire and the new Penfield, but it expired because it took longer in construction, so we have to reapply for it next. We'll try that for next year. We have one for the marina also, but the Park Commission turned that down as the neighborhood people were against that again. That would have gone, we store the boats now in the winter, it would cover the boats. So we thought that was a good place for it, no one would notice it, but the neighborhood didn't agree with us, so that one disappeared. I think that's about it from my memory. I thought I did include them, but I guess I didn't. From my memory, there was about 30 of them either haven't been constructed or about to be constructed or looking for permits on them now. We ran out of buildings, what it amounts to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Okay.
All right. Now, the other energy conservation, which is the projects we do with United Illuminating, it's called Energy Opportunity, where they give us a grant and a loan. The newest one's in Fairfield Woods Library, which was completed late in 2016. And the building is saving about 5,000 kilowatt hours a month, or $60,000 a year, or about 11,000 bucks. Again, I have a year's experience. We could look at the bills and see that happening. The LED lighting project, which was a big $780,000 project we had approved in January, it's too early to tell the project savings yet. It's about 50% completed, but a lot of them are on small buildings, and you really need a year's experience with a small building to see kind of variation. But the Independence Hall, we do have that 1 full month, a large building, and it saved 4,800 kilowatt hours in July and about 900 bucks. So in August, it saved 12,000. That was a full month, and 1,080. So it'll be $15,000 a year at the end of the year just from Independence Hall alone. When we got the senior center, the police station, some of the other bigger buildings, we can get better figures. But it really is hard with the small buildings. It could be $100 or $200 in a small building. Now, we're looking for, in the next month or two, I'm going to be coming before the bodies with maybe about a $4 to $5 million Asset and Energy Management Program, which will look at all 19 buildings and come with major changes in these buildings, which will have a 6-year payback and a positive cash flow in year 1. And I'm going to try and make that presentation in the next couple of months. So
How many millions?
4 to 5 million.
And it'll have a payback in year 1?
No, it'll have a positive cash flow in year 1, but payback of 6 to 7 years.
So it's going to have a positive cash flow of several $100,000 per year.
Well, I'm not saying 700,000. It'll be more.
Several hundred.
It may be more than one, but it'll be there. It depends how much money we get from UI. Reduce the cost. And I'm not projecting a lot. I want to make sure we have the money before. So my projections are not going to include the UI money, so you can see what it looks like. But I'm tying in some of the savings from the new solar to that too to create the positive cash flow. So.
Okay. Questions from board members? Yep, we'll go to Mr. DeWitt, and then we'll go to Mr. Becker.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm trying to follow up on what Mr. Flynn was saying before about how we can see the savings, and your point is valid. You save a megawatt, and then we add a megawatt worth of more, right? So the benefit is zero, right?
But that hasn't been the case recently.
No, exactly. So in the Public Works Operations budget, there's utility electric. That's really the electric bill for the town, right? Correct?
Yes, it is.
That number has significantly gone down in the last 2-3 years. I mean, this year, this budget we're in right now, it's almost $200,000 less than the year before. But I'm interested in your comment about the WPCA being energy independent, because that number has continued to rise.
I know, but that's because the microturbines were shut down, so now we're buying that power. But the fuel cell will replace that by going into this. Now, we didn't budget savings for the fuel cell this year because we weren't sure when
Right.
this problem was going to be solved. But if you notice, look at their natural gas budget. They cut $280,000 out of the natural gas budget because we're no longer buying the
Yeah, the natural gas budget's way
So
down.
that part of it, we've already budgeted for. Next year, we'll be budgeting for electric savings.
Okay. So I guess my question is, how can we really see the net savings? I mean, we're going to go through a whole laundry list of things to save money, and I have no doubt that we're saving money here. Is it quantifiable?
Well, I think it's the way you just said it. Look at the natural gas budget and the electric budget. I mean, that's the proof of the pudding right there, I think. You're buying less power, and you're buying other power, but at a lesser. Some power we're not buying at all. We saved it. Other power we're buying at 10 cents rather than 17 cents. You can see the total savings there. But I could break out the difference between energy conservation and the solar, so you can see how that makes up that difference.
I'm just wondering if, the generation rates for UI fluctuate, right? They're up, they're down, right?
Yeah, we don't buy from UI at all.
Oh, okay.
We
well.
bid it out, and we now have a fixed rate of 7.9 cents for 3
Oh,
years.
so you have a fixed rate you're buying that.
Yep.
So you really can see the savings in
Yes, you
these
can.
numbers. Oh, that's great news then. All right, thank you.
Mr. Becker.
Couple questions. So just on the WPCA facility, so there's going to be the expansion next couple of years. There's certainly a talk about something going
Yep.
on that front. So is that going, is this going to actually cover whatever that future? Have you sort of spec that, or are we thinking that there's going to need to be another round of work and then we'll be self-sufficient?
I don't know what, we don't know what they may add yet, but we know, I talked to the consultants, they said they believe we can see they're going to have energy conservation measures that will save about 1 million kilowatt hours. Once again, they're going to be adding at least 1 million. If that's the case, we'll stay at zero. If they're going to be adding like 1 million kilowatt hours with new equipment, but they're going to save 1 million kilowatt hours. The ultraviolet system alone that we had there for years, and that gets replaced, that'll save like 650,000 kilowatt hours alone. But that's future.
Okay.
But it looks like it'll pretty well balance. However, we have another project in mind. The methane gas that we're just burning off there, we could use that to make electricity and natural gas. So if more, is added, we can use that to offset it to keep that zero balance.
So it might be a bigger facility, but they're going to be doing other things in there that in the end net out those changes plus what you've been doing now.
Correct.
So in the end, you're going to be hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, all projections are
Yep.
trying to stay in that same, okay. Also, just on the infrastructure, I mean, so you mentioned that 20-year life tied to the, sort of the roofs are 20 years, these are 20 years. Do you know what the oldest solar panel system is that we have in the town right now?
It's, the oldest one is at the firehouse and Operation Hope. They're about 5 years old, I think.
Okay, so even the oldest ones are still really
Yeah.
only 5 and have about 15. Because you just sort of project out at some point you want to
Yeah.
keep these. And there may be other programs and probably more efficient panels at the time, but 15 years from now, we'll have to do something to sort of
Right.
continue on.
And the
right?
way it's set up, we can either do one of three things. We can renew our contract with the existing company. We can ask them to rebuild it and do it again, or we can tell them to take it off and bring someone else in. So it's set up in all the contracts so we have the control at the end. So that's good. I just want to
Yeah.
point out something, it's relevant in the sense of hurricanes and solar. Now, I saw in Puerto Rico, solar fields down there were wrecked in the storm, but in Antigua, they were not wrecked. In Antigua, they were built to 150-mile-an-hour standard, and I saw a picture. They're intact and they're running. Now, so I said, let's find out what ours are. Ours are built also the state building code, which was 100-mile-an-hour. Now it's 125 miles an hour. So they're all built to 125, and the newer ones from Warner, they're built to 150 miles an hour. So the ones on the roof. The ones on the ground are staying at 125, so the ones on the roof get the lift. So we are building them to hurricane standard, which didn't concern me until I saw it happen.
Yeah, so even these carport ones and everything are all built to this
Yes.
higher spec for the whole structure?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? I have a quick question. What do you do, if anything, with the Green Bank, the state's Green Bank?
We aren't doing anything directly with it. Some of these projects are financed by the Green Bank. So we have, I think, 3 of them are Green Bank financed. We're better off not financing a Green Bank,
Why is that?
because the Green Bank only estimates the savings for a year, at the end of the year, to give you a true-up.
Yep.
Where the other guys, every month we get off their meters, you know exactly what, we're saving.
Do they have cheaper options or no?
No, it's the same, really. A lot of these companies are able to borrow the money at the same, or they have cash, and then they don't need to borrow from the Green Bank. So even the ones that did have stopped borrowing.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions on this item? We appreciate it. Would like to hear a follow-up once you have more information on some of these newer projects to see exactly.
Absolutely.
And it'd be great to get something that really lists out what the total quote-unquote savings is, as opposed to just project by project, so we would know.
Yeah, I'm trying to create a chart that does that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
All right, we're going to, if the board doesn't have a problem with this, we're going to skip over items 2, 3, and 4, so we get best available information from items 5 and 6. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, seeing that, we're going to ask the Board of Education to step forward and step us through their year-end financial position for 2017, June 2017. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. We've been spending a lot of time together. Doreen, welcome.
Your fun company.
Fun company, that's exactly what it is. All right. Why don't we go ahead to your year-end position? Let's talk about it. Do we have a handout that I'm missing here? Yeah,
It starts with that page.
yeah, I'm just kind of missing it, but go right ahead, start.
Okay, I'm going to concentrate on the page with the budget transfers.
Yep,
As you remember, we had a projected deficit last year of approximately $500,000. We had about $1 million in reserve for most of the year to make sure that we could cover that projected deficit. We closed being able to purchase some items that we had on hold for the good part of the year. We left a balance of about $90,000 on June 30th, and when we officially closed on July 31st, we had about $1,500. So we made it.
questions from board members? Can you step us through where the savings was this year?
Savings overall,
Yeah, what page can I look at
well,
to see?
That would be, the best place for that would be a document that you received before with the savings and the,
Yeah, I'm trying to see where we saved and what you transferred and,
Essentially column one, but it's half of it.
I'm trying to see. Yeah, would this be the best one to look at? What did we,
The overall schedule, transfers.
well, this is after the board transfers, no. There's probably not a good way on this.
to see where the savings was, right? That's
Yeah.
what I was trying to get to. Because this is after all the transfers and everything, so it doesn't really show where you had saved. And I guess what you're saying you did was, you got to the end of the year, you had the $1 million left in kind of reserve that you were set aside. And at the end of the year, knowing that the budget was coming up for this year was going to be tight, you encumbered $992,000. Is that fair to say? Leaving basically an unencumbered balance or a total savings of about $1,500
Correct.
as you ended the year. So is that 992, realistically, some of that was spending that was pulled forward from the 2018 fiscal year to 2017, or no?
No, it was what was on hold for a good part of the year last year.
Okay, so it wasn't, there wasn't any advanced purchasing of stuff that you had hoped to buy in 18. This was all stuff that you'd originally estimated buying in 17, and you waited until the end of the year to buy that,
Correct.
right? What types of items would those be? Mostly maintenance, I see.
There were some maintenance items.
Can you give us some examples of those?
Yep, I have, there was a repair at the turf field at Ward, water heater at Osborne Hill, a boiler and burner repair at Holland Hill.
Okay. What about what about capital? What was in the 180,000 that was, again, were those things that were held off, and then when you saw that you had the expenditures available, you used them?
Yes, capital was technology equipment and equipment at the schools that had been on hold.
And what's in the school expense line item there? Do you know? Is that just stuff that you asked the principals to hold off on?
Actually, we didn't ask the principals to hold. We let them, do what they had to do with the classroom, and that's how
Okay.
they ended up, yeah.
So what would this be then?
Under the school?
Yeah, it's under school expenses, and it's about $103,000. I'm just wondering what types of expenses those are.
Overall, the schools get an allocation.
Right.
Is
Needs a paper,
paper,
stuff for.
I find it hard to believe, though, that we held off on paper all year and then spent it at the end of the year, right? That's what I'm,
no, that's, we
Yeah, Mr.
didn't, we
Chair?
didn't hold off on school.
yeah,
This isn't necessarily all holdbacks, because there's always
some
items
Right.
ordered
Right.
that just haven't been received yet, so you haven't paid them yet. So.
No, I get it.
So a portion of those could have just been normal course of business as opposed to holdbacks.
Absolutely, particularly on the maintenance and the capital items where things happen over summer. I get that part. I'm more questioning the school expenses, because, so what was it last year at this time? So what was it last year at this time?
What I'm just saying is it's.
I know what
yeah,
you're saying.
got it.
But what was it last year at this time?
I don't have last year's.
The total coverages?
All right, can we just,
Total was 662 last year.
right,
but
so
I
this
don't know
is
by-
992.
Right.
So, and last year, we had a very similar situation because of some of the budgetary issues. I'm just curious as to what's in the school expense line, that's all. Can we just get a look at what's in there, if you don't mind?
Are you talking about the 103? Is that?
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. At a later date's fine. Anybody have any other questions? Mr. Brown?
Can we, on this worksheet that you have, Laura?
Yep.
Okay. we could just take a look at item 17. So that's off by $1 million. So what is, I mean, you have some detail in the other sheets, but maybe we should talk about what's really driving that.
Yep. Tuition. Professional services, OTPT, consultations. More of the same,
of the
rehab
same.
associates is,
So on tuition,
mhm.
and I'm going to kind of, it's a little, I'm going to sound fragmented because I got to test my memory. There was a new service that we had put through as a school to keep, or to help the kids stay in district, right? So we outsourced to, I can't remember,
ESS.
ESS, that was designed to provide services to keep kids in district to drive down that tuition cost. So I don't, is there more, is tuition going up, or are there more kids going out? Is that program working to what we expected?
I would say that right now, we're studying that very deeply. We're into our third year, and the first year that we started ESS, we moved right around $660,000 out of tuition to be able to fund this program. And if you look on the sheet addition to that, down where it says Pupil Personnel Services, and it's line 329, you'll see that we were over 664 on the tuition line. So we're trying to figure out, is that just natural growth, or is that actually telling us something about a specific program? And we're in the middle of studying that right now.
Okay. So, as we go into this current budget season, you think you'll have an answer? I mean, is the program worth continuing? Or is it not worth, and what are we
Okay.
paying? This doesn't
we
include
have
what
a
we're paying
choice
these
here?
people,
Yeah.
right?
This tuition line? No.
So what are we paying?
What do we pay for the program now?
Yeah.
Well, and to think about it, you don't want to think about it just that you're paying for a program, because you get the people that come with the program. So there are, it's almost like FTE that are attached. It's just they're not
Okay.
FPS employees, but it's right around 660,000. I mean, it's pretty close to that number.
Okay. So you think you'll have this analyzed for this budget season?
We have a brand-new special ed director. He just started, just after July 1, but he's been very hard at work looking at everything that's contractual, and this is one component of that we just want to really study the numbers, and it may show that the program is fantastic for our students, and it's something we need to stay the course with, and it may be that as we get in and really look, it's not doing exactly what we thought that it was going to do, and we may want to tweak it or change it altogether. And we're hoping by the time we get into the budget season, we are much more well-informed. We're studying the data right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you. Just a clarification on this. This is the overview. I think what I'm reading is, so I see the first line obviously is the budget. Then there were transfers made. So out of maintenance operation is that transportation? 586,000 roughly was transferred along with other line items to cover that $1.1 million of pupil expense, correct? And then, after you realized at the end of the budget that there was 992,000 left over, you then spent 522,776 toward that maintenance. But isn't it true that the real maintenance budget is really $1 million underspent from what you were appropriated? Because you were appropriated 17.5 and you total expenditures were 16.5. And the only reason I bring this up is because as much as I appreciate the extra $1 million hanging around, I'm fearful of this maintenance bill coming us and hitting us like 2 years from now, and it'd be 2 extra zeros on it.
Just remember that it's maintenance as well as operations, so maybe it's operations
Sure.
to
Oh,
your point.
good
Yeah.
good point, right? So, Maybe there was a significant savings in operations, I don't know, but I'd be curious what that number is, because, again, I appreciate what you're doing in the savings, but again, I'm really worried that we got a big maintenance bow wave coming at us. I mean, is it accurate what I'm saying, that we,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
yeah?
And you might want to look at the back page, which is page 2 of 2, where it has maintenance operations, so transportation on the bottom section, and that helps a little bit where you can
Oh,
see
yeah.
even utility savings. We had a lighter snow last year as well, so we had snow savings. All those kind of pieces accumulate. So it's really, I guess I don't want you to think it's just we're letting the building fall apart. We're
No,
trying to
and
make sure we're really
clearly
taking
that's not
care.
what I'm, you know.
Yeah, we're really trying to take care of those items.
Understand. It's funny because snow and like that it's just lucky last year, right?
Right.
This year could turn the opposite way, and then we could be staring at a number
Absolutely.
with parentheses around it and not, right? So, okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Questions, comments from other board members?
I'm really worried about that freaking thing.
As we're into the school year now, and I know you guys have your own challenges because of some of the state cuts, are there any areas that you're particularly concerned of, since we're sitting here right now at the beginning of October, in spending? Other than all of them? But are there anything is special ed higher than you thought? Is transportation higher than you thought? Are you having problems with the schools that you didn't anticipate? Are you having, what's going on?
I don't know if Ms. Munsell would weigh in, but for me, it's too early. We still were getting the last hires in place, and so we have to really look at where did we come in on our hiring this year. Special education costs, when you end the year, you start the year with the same students. A lot of that, grows during the year depending on qualification. I will say, our unique programs, we did have to add the additional early childhood center program, was not in the budget last year. We had to add 2 CLC classes, which are for special needs that are out in our schools, were not in the budget. So we're watching the staffing very closely right now.
Okay, but there's nothing otherwise that's a big gotcha right now.
Not that we know of yet. We
Yeah.
haven't gotten that far.
I think the lack of knowledge of what's happening in the state is the biggest gotcha.
Yeah, that's a given. I just didn't know if there was something else we should be aware of. Mr. Becker?
If I may, can we just, following up on Mr. DeWitt's
Yep.
questions, if we could just get, you don't have to do it tonight, but if you could just get back up, maybe just a breakout on the maintenance for us, projects, whatever it may have been, that'd be helpful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns from board members right now?
So,
Mr. DeWitt? Yeah.
Open choice enrollment for the new school year, are we up, down, what's the number?
Open choice, as of right now, we have not taken any students for this school year. And any
New
new
students,
students,
okay.
right. And that is because of the budget situation.
And the numbers are still where, roughly in the 70?
Yeah, I would actually have to pull that number and double check. We do everything on October 1st.
Right.
Got
Got
it,
it.
thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Anything else on the Board of Ed? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll go to review the town's end-of-year financial position. We're taking 5 and 6 before 2 and 3, so that we have better information. Thank you very much. Oh, she over there, I find that. Mr. Mayor, how are you? Ms. Bossy, how are you? You want to walk us through, where do you want to direct us to, please?
Let's start with document number 1.
What a great way to start. Document number 1 in item 6. Funny, I don't see it labeled actually that way. Looking for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Top right.
This is the first
Got
page
it.
says it.
Go ahead.
So basically, this is the end results for the year. As was preliminary reported actually last week in our meeting.
Mr. Mayor, can you speak into the microphone? No one
Not
can hear
doing
you.
that? I'm sorry. Am I on? I'm on, but doesn't, okay. Get closer. So the end result for revenue, you can see the $3,276,000 negative variance from the state revenue was offset by positive variance in taxes, $1,004,000, building revenues, $440,000, and park and recreation revenue, $376,000. Which led to a net negative $969,000.
Before we go any further, on the current and prior year levy, I know there were some assumptions made going into 2018 related to, I believe there were tax sales as well as what the collection rate was. Does any of this overage in 2017 give us pause for 2018's estimates?
No. We're still good.
We're still good, and collections through today are pretty strong.
Yes.
Okay. Next question. Park and recreation revenue, what's driving that up so much? And then I'll turn it over to everybody else.
I don't it was basically fee increases. And we have a note. Caitlin has the detailed notes on that.
Well, I think about 300 was asked of the Park and Rec Department to be given back, so it was a little bit over that. There's about 75 overage on come September 30, their overage over the 200,000.
When you say it was asked, remind me on revenue, I'm,
Well, they did things, well, there was, going into the year,
right,
you know, we knew we had a difficult budget year, and so there was a concerted effort on the administration to try to increase some fee revenues and to minimize some expenses. And I know, like, for example,
well, the minimized of the expenses I get, but that wouldn't come until down below. I'm talking specifically.
right, I know,
about
I'm just
revenue.
saying, I'm just
Yeah.
saying what, if it was. And part of, like, in the Parks and Rec, like lacrosse or something, they play twice a year, but they were only charged for half the year or something. So there's free fee increase adjustments in the, do you have it on
In
the
the
schedule?
revenue, yeah, and on the revenue
Revenue
schedule,
write-up.
you're going to see beach
Right.
stickers was up 119,000 due to, partially due to the resident rate increase from 20 to 25. Part 3 fees was actually a little bit under due to some rain. ID cards
Went from 70
was
to
up from 50 to 70.
Right.
So it was really kind of across the board with,
Okay.
between the beaches and the golf courses.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to board members for questions on revenue now. Anyone, questions on revenue? Okay, so we're negative 969, largely due to the 3.3 of the state, offset by those other items, correct?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, on the expense side, just one note there, you said under operational savings, vacancies has been pulled out of each of the departments. So vacancies is a standalone item. So for example, when you look at fire 275, that has no vacancy in it, that's other items. So the total vacancy savings, part of that normal churn, part of that positions put on hold for a longer period of times than just rehiring to fill because of the concerns over the budget, last year's budget and going into this year's budget. The fire 275, they had some significant savings in overtime. Legal is a combination.
What was the savings in overtime there? How were they able to do that? Because that's been a,
Yeah, they have multiple number of overtime budgets. Which one was it specifically? That's in the list there.
Yeah, it's on the expense side on the, they're under the fire. It was kind of across the board between, there's about 3 or 4, like you said.
One, right.
On page 3 of 5 of the expenditure variance. Basically, the sick leave was favorable, the fire department business leave was tightened, there was 3 retirements, 3 new firefighters had already gone through the academy, so that was no backfill, that saved about $80,000. A few training exercises were not completed due to lack of a fire training center, and the ice rescue wasn't possible due to the conditions. It was kind of a various listing of things, but it's all listed on the comment section.
great, thank you.
I'm sorry, what was your comment about the training center?
It wasn't open, so they couldn't do some training drills?
Oh, so that's that $82,000?
No, I don't know. The 80 was for the fire academy, so when they hire someone who's already gone through,
Oh, got it,
they
okay.
don't need to backfill.
Got it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Then legal is primarily labor savings and fewer BA adjustments, BA adjustment court actions. Waste and recycling. And I don't really-
Lower tonnage, but offset by lower revenue.
Human resources, we budget based upon the projected insurance rates that we get from the broker. We ended up, those ended up being higher than anticipated. Excuse me,
Lower
when
than
I say
anticipated, yeah.
the result was lower, but the estimates were higher. The assessor, that goes back to appeals. We had fewer appeals, therefore, the legal work is in the legal budget, but a lot of expenses related to appeals are in the assessor's budget, expert witnesses, that kind of stuff. So those are the primary savings there, plus some savings due to the open position for the assessor. Conservation, there was one position that wasn't filled. ECC position wasn't filled. So that wouldn't be in, shouldn't be in there, it'd be in vacancies.
Yeah, I was wondering
ECs,
that
yeah,
myself.
yes. So debt service, Caitlin can explain better than I can.
Oh, the debt service is favorability with the interest rate estimation in the budget. It was more favorable for the first year's payment.
I do have one question going back up. Mr. Walsh, did you have a question? I had a question on legal for a minute. So we had some unanticipated expenses related to the special election. That's factored into the savings of 149?
You're asking about,
You're asking about
Well-
that bill.
Any bill related to the special
Any bill,
election?
right, and I got it. I don't think that bill's been accrued.
no, do we have it?
No, that bill has not been accrued, excuse me, let me rephrase myself. Not all the related bills have been accrued because they haven't come to the finance department as approved for payment.
Where, are they in the town hall?
They are in the First Selectman's office.
And why haven't they come to the finance department?
That would have to be a question for the administration. It's my understanding they're reviewing the bills, because a couple of inconsistencies and a couple of
Why don't
other
we
issues.
call up the first selectman, we can talk about it.
Yeah, Mr. Tetra, what's going on with those bills? Just because if we're saying we've got all these savings, I want to make sure things are appropriately accrued, or what have you. And don't trip, we don't want another lawsuit.
Thank you, and I thought you were worried about me not getting hurt. Simply put, I don't believe the bill came in until July.
It's
Because it
now
was-
almost
it-
October.
Yeah, it was, well, this is for fiscal 17, if I'm correct.
Okay.
So the bill didn't come in until July.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it would have been accrued because all the work and everything was done before the special election, I would assume on, and I'm not talking one specific bill, I'm talking all bills related to it.
Okay,
Yeah.
first of all, there is only one specific bill.
I thought there were bills,
That
we had
various
multiple attorneys.
We had various attorneys all
The
over.
other attorney bills were in, and so those should be included.
That's what I'm asking. What's not included here, what is?
That specifically, Baldwin's bill, Attorney Baldwin didn't bill us until July.
Okay.
So that was a rather large bill. There were certain specific inconsistencies in that, and because of some of the legal questions surrounding what was appropriate billing or not, we're having that reviewed by an outside attorney.
Okay, so we've got a potential hit here of some number.
Wow.
Yeah, that's going, I'll be speaking, thanks for bringing it up, actually. That will affect our later
Right, that's right.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because well, what dawned on me
Yeah.
was $150,000 worth of savings are pretty good savings. If you take bills related to something that was supposed to
Yeah.
happen, right, that was a significant savings of somewhere
Right.
over $200,000,
Right.
which brought my,
No.
brought to my attention.
I hear you.
Okay. Did you have something?
Yeah, can we get a copy of all the legal bills, the ones from 17 and the ones that have come in for 18 on that special election? I'd like a copy of all of them and sent to the entire Board of Finance, and whether they've, and I'd like them marked paid or not paid, and when they were paid, if they have been,
Easy enough?
and a copy of the check. That'd
Easy
be great.
enough.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Tetro, and don't trip going back to your seat.
And then, so unused contingency, 146,000. So total savings on the, from operations, 2,540,000.
So what I'm surprised we don't see here, and thank you, and nice work on the savings, so don't take this as a criticism. What's surprising that I don't see here, I would have thought there would be more savings from DPW giving the ease of the winter we had. And that's not, where was that money? I mean, did we spend the money on snow plowing? I mean, what happened to that?
Well, when you say savings from DPW, I have a list of by category here, or by department.
Yeah, it's probably Becky.
It's actually over budget. Page 4 of 5 says the overtime snow removal budget. $8,000 more or less.
How is that possible, given the light winter we had?
Sorry, page 4 of 5 in the,
Yeah.
expenditures.
Yeah, I thought it was over budget.
It says overdue to slightly more snowman hours than budgeted.
Did I miss something
Well,
this winter?
But then it
I
says
think Scotty
seasonal
was telling us
payroll, they
about that
utilize
there was
less
a lot of
seasonal
ice
employees for the
events and other,
offset itself.
it's
Hang on,
it's
everybody's
based on
talking
the,
at the same time. Hey, go ahead.
I thought we had gotten a discussion about this during the budget season, about the number of events when we were asking about how much money was left in the snow budget. And it was based on the number of events, am I correct? And it's, I guess you might as well explain your business.
Yeah, please do, because I'm not saying you're wrong, I don't remember it.
No problem. If you recall, if you go back several budgets, we've actually been grossly underfunded, but when Mike
Yeah.
came into the administration, we started a program where we're allocating like $50,000
Per s-
more per year
Right.
to get up to what our operating costs are more typical. So yes, we went over, but we went over a low number, if that makes sense. In other words, I don't believe we didn't just, overnight go up $150,000. We're clipping away at like $50,000 a year with a net increase of $150,000 in the 3-year period to get us to an actual expenditure that relates to what we expend in snow.
Scott, could you talk a little bit about the number of events versus the size per event?
Yep. I don't have my snow form in front of me, but essentially,
Yeah.
we do record every event, the cost of every event, and I want to say we probably did 13 or 14 events last year. So even though it seems like a mild winter, whether it's black ice, a dusting, it's still a response by us in terms of public safety, getting the roads done, making sure the public
So
can.
you're saying it wasn't, from your perspective, it wasn't as mild a winter as perhaps I'm remembering?
Yeah, if I remember, I think it was more of it was an on-again and off-again winter. There were stretches of mild weather. We didn't, have a lot of snow, and then there were some stretches of below normal cold and some frequency of snow.
So in this current budget for 2018,
I
if
believe we're
I'm
in-
here correctly, we've budgeted about, if I'm following, $50,000 more for 18 than we did for 17.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, the total.
Mr. Brown?
Oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
So on vacancies, so we had $728,000 savings, but how many of those positions have been filled now? We won't get that savings in 18, I don't believe, correct? You filled them?
Well, it's like some have been filled, and some are scheduled to be filled, and some are scheduled not to be filled.
And how many are scheduled not to be filled?
For the full year, I think about 5.
Okay.
But I have that schedule.
And then what savings would that bring us?
Well, if you remember from last week, the schedule that was handed out, the savings, based upon the holds, the combination of the holds for specific times, plus the ones that are going to be held open all year, was $621,000, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yes.
The total number in the vacancies in that 775, 728 vacancy, 109 of that is DPW. Okay, so, and then if the number I kind of skipped over, the other operational savings of 682,000, the last line there, 682 is a big number, but it's basically 20 departments when you take out that have, like, the town clerk is 23,000, miscellaneous contingency 21,000, retiree benefits 24,000, and then the public works, and again, these exclude the vacancy, was 56,000. So there's lots of, $20,000, $15,000 savings from most all the departments as a result of the request from the administration to hold back on expenditures the last 6 months of the year.
Yep, should do it.
But just so I'm clear, these may not be repeatable savings. This might only be a one-year, times are tough, 682,000, right? So, well, I guess what I'm saying is this. Are we going to see an addition, $682,000 reduction in the overall town budget? Sounds like the answer is no, right?
I'm not sure I understand the question, because you're going to see this year, for not counting any other normal churn, you're going to see 621,000 savings fiscal year 2018, based upon positions that will not be filled at all, or positions that will only be filled for a portion of the year.
No, I'm just talking about this other departmental savings. So you just said it's
Oh,
over...
the 628.
Yeah, it's over
Yeah,
20
right,
departments.
Right, right, yes.
This is not a systemic thing, or this
Correct.
is a one-time
Correct,
need the money.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Mayor, give us the fund balance now at the end of 2017 and how that compares to the operating budget, please?
The fund balance, you talking about the unassigned fund balance?
Yeah.
June 30, 17, budgetary basis, 28,031,000.
It's document 2 in your packet.
Yeah, I just want to go on the record with it. It's hard to find in all these documents, to be honest with you. What is it after the transfers? If we do the transfers,
That's what it will be if we do the transfers.
okay, if we don't do the transfers, what does it come in to be, or if we don't move forward with the,
Well, it'd be 27,500 and,
right, what
31,000.
percentage, I'm sorry?
and what it would reduce the 959, 9.59 by?
Yeah, well, wait a minute, we're at, I'm trying to find the darn document, I apologize.
Right after.
Yeah, it's not, actually, in my package, it's not stapled.
No, it's
in.
not. It's after, it's after the
Yeah,
expense,
take that one, thanks.
it's after the expense variance report.
Yeah, okay, thank you. This is what I was looking for, I couldn't find it in my package. Okay, so, 28, if we do the transfers that you're saying tonight to move the 1.8 million, correct?
Correct.
Is it
1.5.
1.5.
1.5. If we move the 1.5, then we're at the 28 million, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
And that would be at 9.59 is the estimated. And then next year, we're estimated to be at 9.57, right?
Correct.
Okay, if we didn't do the transfer, we'd be closer to 29.5, right?
We would be, if we didn't do the transfer,
Or the carryover, whatever we want to call it.
oh, right, then that would increase it by $1.5 million, be 29.
Right, so it would be well over 10%,
Right.
or would be just, we would be over 10%.
We would be over 10%.
Okay, and on a GAAP basis, we're just at about 9. Which are the, remind me again, which one are the credit rating agencies look at? GAAP basis or budgetary basis?
A gap,
Okay, so they're looking at the 9,
correct.
not the 9.59. Okay.
Yeah, we give them both.
Yeah, no, I get
Yeah.
it. Thank you for that. Questions, comments, concerns from anyone on the board on this schedule? Mr. Mayor, anything else we should know as we close out, or Ms. Bossy, anything we should know as we close out 2017? Before we go and discuss the transfer schedules or anything?
Well,
Nothing, anything
There's
concerning
nothing
you?
about 2017.
Nothing audit-related or anything that's a
No,
concern?
the audit's going very smoothly. It's very good to have to be able to switch auditors and have the same partner.
Right.
Though we do have a different look because we do have a new manager, obviously.
Got it. Mr. Walsh, did you have
Yeah,
something?
to each of you separately, what were the biggest surprises you found in the fourth quarter fiscally?
Well, when you say biggest surprises, if you remember in the third quarter,
Yeah.
we weren't as positive as this. And then I think we mentioned during that third quarter the review that I thought that the tax and the building and the town clerk's numbers were conservative. And I was surprised how conservative they turned out to be. So that was the revenue from the town clerk, the revenue from the building, and the bounce back in the taxes. I expected them to all be better, and as I think I mentioned.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
But they turned out to be better than I thought. The other is, one of the other items that was significantly different third quarter versus final. At that time, everyone was projecting that interest rates would go up. So I was projecting a mark-to-market negative of about, I think, $250,000 or $300,000. And that ended up only being like a $50,000. So their prizes were mostly on the revenue side. On the expense side, though we anticipated that, because when we do the quarterly reviews with the department heads, they're mostly focused on the fear factor of what am I over. They're not as looking at where their savings might be, so to speak. It's not a focus in their mindset. And we anticipated something because we'd asked people to save money, not to spend. And the aggregate of the 20 departments coming in at the savings amount it did was a bit of a surprise as well.
That it was higher than you thought
Yeah,
it would be?
it was higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Mrs. Bossy?
I mean, really the same. A lot of times we don't know if there's any big invoice out there till July, sometimes August. So it was refreshing as we started to look through all of our utilities and all of our bigger numbers to see that we have all 12 months in and we're still looking pretty good.
Okay. And are there any other, I got to ask the question, given the conversation earlier, to your point about big invoices, are there other invoices potentially out there that haven't found its way to you yet? What's your process to go through and assure that that doesn't happen because we have one that's
I
sitting
send out
there?
numerous reminders to all the department heads. Said, okay, you know, we're closing. We keep accounts payable open for until the first week in August.
Right.
Which really gets them in tune for, okay, let me make sure I have all my invoices in. Come July 1st, I go through all the mail. I remind everyone, you know, we start doing our analysis in the department on the accounts that we know about, the ones that are fixed, in terms of number of invoices to expect. So, few reminders. There were a couple big ones that we got after that 1st to August Friday, so I ran subsequent AP check runs for the next 2 weeks, actually, just for stragglers. So,
Okay.
and I look at the mail every day that we get. I mean, it's hard to know if there's one in someone's drawer. I mean, but we can only do what we could do for what we know about.
Okay. So as far as you know, with the exception of this one item, you're accrued up and including everything for June
If something came
30th.
in even at the end of August, I accrue for it through a journal entry.
Right.
And I don't remember if I have or not, but I go through basically every invoice that comes into the department. If I see any fiscal 17 dates on it, I'll either kick it back if there's time for them to fix it, or I'll accrue for it myself.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mrs. Esmond?
I have kind of an esoteric question on the revenue side. Property taxes, do we mandate that, and I'm not sure who this is for, do we mandate that somebody moving into Fairfield from out of state has to register their automobile in the state of Connecticut? I see a lot of out-of-state plates. I don't know if we're leaving a lot of money on the table or how that works in terms of town or state laws or mandates on that.
There are state laws that require, I think, within 60
Unless you own
days.
property in another state, which is usually the reason, but...
Yeah, the state law requires people when they move here to register their vehicles.
But is there any process we go through? Do we do anything on the town side?
No.
When somebody comes in to register, when we do a housing thing, do we look at their motor vehicle or anything like that?
No.
I don't know how we could, I don't know what
No,
I'm...
it's, there's some towns with significantly high mill rates
Yep.
have problems with people registering their cars in Maine, or especially if on the New York border, like Danbury has a high mill rate, they're close to New York. So some towns have a problem with that. Our mill rate, you know, is, even though it's high compared to Westport, right? But relative to state norms, we're low. I don't see it as a problem there.
We're not on the border.
We're not on the border. We do, once in a while, have conversations with the police department about if you see anything, if people get pulled over that look like that, please, let us know, because we've got to keep track. There's a couple that have been noted, but not enough to make me believe it's a significant problem.
Okay.
I would just point out that while all those points I think are all valid and certainly impact what we see, in addition, we have two large and growing universities. And the student population there would be bringing cars in from out of state.
Right.
So that would also be something we'd see on a regular basis, which would kind of be the norm. One of the ways we manage this, if you want to use certain town facilities like the beach, you need to have a car registered here.
Mm-hmm.
So potentially you could have multiple cars and have some registered elsewhere, but you need to have one registered here.
Bet you're the oldest one.
Now,
Thank you.
either way, the motor vehicle
Moped.
piece is a significant piece of our tax revenue each year.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Any other questions
Yeah.
on this item? Mr. Walsh?
With the
And then
knowledge
Mr.
that this was going to be a tough year coming up for 18, was there, either through the administration or through the departments themselves, did you see more expenses, people trying to spend their budgetary dollars down to zero and to load up on stuff,
Just the
supplies,
opposite.
whatever it was?
Just the opposite.
Just the opposite, okay.
Anyone else? Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you. Last week, I think it was last week, we were handed non-budgetary funds available for potential fiscal year funding that had a carry forward from FY17 number of 1.6 million. That number is now 1.525 after tonight, right?
And going down.
And go, yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to close off this item, and I'm going to go up to item number 2, which is to hear, consider, and act upon a request from the Chief Fiscal Officer to approve Schedules A, B, C, D, E, and F, carrying over funds for encumbrances and reappropriations as of June 30th, 2017, as supported by purchase orders or letters of request by department heads or Chief Fiscal Officer, and to authorize management to adjust the carryover amount as necessary based on the final audited balances to result in a minimum increased fund balance of $550,000. Take it away, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'll explain that 550,000. That's a new wrinkle. That's not been in prior year resolutions.
Yeah,
And last year, our concern was on the revenue side, if you remember correctly, right?
I do.
Which we have pretty much nailed down. It's easy to nail down, but specific amounts. As we just noted with the discussion on the expenses, that you're not always confident you're nailing down all of your expenses. So what that addition to that resolution does is it allows us to, when we get done, if we find like a $50,000 bill or something, we can adjust the transfer down so we can maintain that minimum $550,000 contribution to surplus.
Right, so you don't not hit the 550
Correct.
by finding an error in the expenses.
Correct.
Okay, walk us through the schedules very quickly so that we can understand exactly what's being asked for here.
Okay, I'll have turn that over to the controller.
Schedule A is our open purchase orders, and there's a Munis report that backs up by department what purchase orders they'd like to carry over. Keep in mind that the Public Works operations, the 322, the big chunk of that is for the DPW, the pile. The additional authorization for the pile resides in the DPW budget. So that was...
Like 300,000, is it?
No, it was like 59 of that 322.
Of the 320, got it.
Okay. And the biggest chunk of that is one of the trucks that was previously on hold for most of the year, that they were able to encumber about 196 of that. And you can see that on the listing on that report.
Yep.
The rest are smaller, a boiler replacement, tree removal from a bid, some advertising for Mark Barnhart's department, some scanning services were on hold. The Kennedy Center performs that for the building department. Some blackout draperies in the dining room of the senior center. That total the 358.
Mr. Walsh?
Which truck, Scott, was the 196 for, the hold? And will that allow you to buy that truck completely now?
In the budget book, there were priority 10 and 11. We had purchased number 10. Number 11 was on hold, and we got the green light if this was voted in to extend and order the truck. So that's what we're hoping for.
What type of truck is it?
Six-wheel dump truck, fully loaded, plow, sander.
So we still haven't bought a street sweeper?
No, we did.
We
bought
did.
We had the favorable enough that we got the green light on the sweeper this budget as well, yes.
Okay.
So this was one truck out of the approved budget that had been held back, and so you would have bought your full complement of budgeted trucks for last fiscal year if this gets approved?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And how many street sweepers are in this coming year's 18 budget?
One that we're probably on hold again.
Thank you.
Okay.
The bottom of Schedule A is the same for the Water Pollution Control Authority. They have some smaller POs. Schedule B is 0, which would have been 2-year carryover for the same PO.
I'm actually glad to see that being
Yeah,
0.
I don't like carrying over things for 2
Yeah.
years. C is it's accounting-wise treated the same as an encumbrance, but it's a reappropriation in that there's no PO that's been issued.
Yep. The $100,000 is the strategic planning, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The 65 is the remainder of the authorized pile money, less the encumbrance that I just spoke about. There's $64,000, and there's emails to back this up, for the floor at the Scale House, and $40,000 for a project for IT. I think it has to do with disaster recovery.
Is there any questions on any of these items? And these are items that were budgeted, were not spent, were not technically encumbered, but that we want to reappropriate because we want to use the funds from last year's budget to pay for these items that we had already appropriated, but did not get done.
Correct.
Okay. Questions? Mr. DeWitt, did you have something?
I'm just trying to find the backup for it.
Okay.
I'm wondering what the IT was.
The IT one is the move out of the basement of the Fairfield Woods Library.
And where are we moving that one to again?
Trumbull.
Yeah. Where?
Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the firm. Network Synergy has a cloud.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Walsh, did you have a question?
Yeah, the $100,000, that was for the strategic planning project. Why didn't it get done last year during the budget season?
The committee did not come online in time, get the RFP issued, going out. It's currently out now, I believe.
The RFP's outstanding now?
Yes.
Okay.
The $100,000 is specifically money to be spent on a consultant to help with the strategic plan. The committee didn't get to that. They spent this summer working on the RFP.
Okay. So there's an RFP outstanding and we're getting bids
It's either
back now?
out or will be out shortly.
Okay. So do we expect that this will be fully spent in the coming year, during 18?
That's my expectation, but we'll see when the RFP comes back in terms of what the dollars are. I believe we had a conversation when this was initially appropriated, is $100,000 enough?
Mhm.
I don't have any information to say it isn't,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll know more when the RFPs come back.
Okay.
We expect it, the RFP to be spent over the project to take more than 1 year. So in fact, this dollar amount might be on an outstanding PO at that point because we'd have a firm to have a PO with. We don't have that firm at the moment.
Okay, could you report back to us at our next quarterly on where we stand with that project?
Certainly,
Just whether the RFPs come back with a number that's 100,000 is enough, where we stand with it.
Happy to do
Great,
that.
thank you.
Any other questions? And Mr. DeWitt, I apologize. We got the answer on the IT, but you didn't say that it was, you were okay with that answer.
I can't,
Okay. Any other questions?
And the IT was for the disaster recovery?
It was to actually move the items out of the basement at Fairfield Woods, which we've been actually talking about for many years now, and move it to a separate hosted facility in Trumbull with a third-party hosting environment, correct?
Correct.
Do we have a disaster recovery policy in place yet? Because this board's continually been asking for that for, I think, 5 years.
Pretty close.
We don't have a written approved plan. No, we do have certain actions taking place. For example, moving this to Trumbull. One of the items in the waterfall is moving the the Sullivan Independence Hall facility, a couple $100,000, I think. 200,000?
I think so.
$200,000 to another facility. So we are thinking about different things, but there's not a formal, elaborate disaster recovery plan, no. I mean, accounting has, policies and concepts, but nothing's that's been pulled together for all the departments and all the activities.
Are you talking about IT relate, or the
We're
whole town?
We're talking about town-wide. We've been asking it for 5 years, that we have
You're
a
talking about
complete...
police and fire and ECC?
Everything.
Oh.
Everything, and we have a plan on how we're going to spend our money, what type of plan needs to go into effect, what type of dollars that's going to entail, how we're going to spend that money over whatever period of time that is.
Okay,
We
I
just seem
can only
to-
speak to the finance and IT piece. There's a new director, so
Yeah.
we've been in communication about doing this.
Okay, it
For
was
our
more,
pieces.
I think the question was more about the global, not about finance portion of it. And I guess with now having a new IT director who seems more capable, and having him now had a chance to get his feet wet, it seems as though the two IT directors should start at least, and involve finance, I guess, putting together what that policy is going to be, and that we get some type of plan on where we're going, what type of money that's going to involve over how many years, and how we're going to get there.
Can we get, at our next quarterly meeting, much like we had the discussion on the energy savings tonight, just kick us off, can we get a brief discussion on what the thoughts are on disaster recovery? I'd like to, I'm very heartened by the fact that we're finally addressing the Fairfield Woods Disaster Center being moved away from the sump pumps, and hoping that we're going to, and assuming we're going to a much better, more cared-for facility in Trumbull, so that's great. But to Mr. Walsh's point, I think we'd like to know what the steps are and what the process is to get a full disaster recovery plan in place. I don't expect it'll be done by our next quarterly review, obviously, but would like to know what the thought process is and where we're going there, please.
Got it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Anything else?
No.
Anybody else on these items? Okay, now, I made a faux pas and did not put this before us, so I'm going to ask for somebody to put it before us. Mr. DeWitt and Mr. Braun, can you second that, please? So item number 2 is now before us, and I'm going to read it, and then we'll take a vote. To hear, consider, and act upon a request from the Chief Fiscal Officer to approve Schedules A, B, C, D, E, and F, carrying over funds for encumbrances and reappropriations as of June 30th, 2017, as supported by purchase orders or letters of request by department heads or the Chief Fiscal Officer, and to authorize management to adjust the carryover amount as necessary based on the final audited balance to result in a minimum increase of fund balance of $550,000. All in favor of this item? Opposed? Abstention? The item carries unanimously. Thank you. Thanks for the discussion and the work on that item. Now we're going to go to item number 3, to hear, consider, and act upon a request from the Chief Fiscal Officer to approve transfers as of June 30th, 2017. Mr. Mayor, take it away.
And again, the controller will lead this.
Thank you.
You should have a agenda item number 3 in the upper right-hand corner. So there's a,
Yep.
okay. The first section has to do with slight overages in a few departments. So legally, we need to make sure that they are not over by department, so that is a budget transfer request from a department that has extra money in it, in the budget. So we're transferring from legal to those subset of accounts. The next 2 pieces have to do with transferring the 1525, which we just spoke about on our summary sheet, over to debt service to help out our fiscal 18 budget. So again, these are budget transfers out of various departments, moving it to a debt service transfer out expense of the 1380 and the contingency, which I could have maybe lumped in the top, but $145,000 left in contingency, again, flowing over to debt service to be used in fiscal 18.
Okay, question on this. Now, I know we did this last year, and this has to do with taking these funds, moving them over, and helping with the 2018 issue, right?
Yeah.
And the 1380 and the 145 are discrete and different from the 49,000, which is basically a true-up of certain departments through the
Right.
course of the year, correct? Do we lose, I cannot remember. So last year, we did it this way to keep it clean and to move it all to debt,
Right.
right? So that we had the funds available to spend in other areas. What happens tonight after we move this over? What happens with the additional funds we're moving over to 2018?
So what happens, there's a budget transfer to this debt service
Yep.
transfer, and then we could use the 15, I move it over to a debt service fund, and then I subsequently pay 1525 worth of debt expenses out of that fund.
Okay.
Well, let me elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah.
In essence, town has a budget
Yep.
that's got revenues and expenditures in the budget.
Right.
The anticipation, the problem is not necessarily right now on expenditures. The problem comes from a revenue problem.
Right.
We're anticipating a loss of revenue of somewhere between, 2 million and whatever, right?
Right.
So by moving this item into the debt service org, we would end up with the year with a positive variance on the expense side
Yep.
in that org. And that positive variance would be used to help offset the loss of revenue.
So in essence, what we're doing is we're truing up debt, or we're not truing it up, we're topping it off, creating an artificial good guy in next year's budget.
Correct.
Because we know we're not going to have to pay that debt. So by doing this, we immediately put in a $1.5 million good guy into 2018's budget.
Correct.
Right? And that way, other budgetary line items can be spent up to their budgeted amount regardless of what happens with state revenue, because we know we have this $1.5 million.
We know the budget impact is probably going to be less than 1.5, but yes, it would be working towards covering a portion of that.
Okay. Now, part of this,
Go ahead.
part of this is, last week you presented us with schedules that showed between this 1.5, between the other carryover we did last year that was unspent, right? We got somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million worth of good guys in the 2018 budget. Now, let me take a step back. That $4 million includes a hiring freeze, it includes some other items that were done, right?
Correct.
As well as this item, as well as the carryover from last year. Fair statement?
Exactly correct statement.
Okay. I just want to get us all on the same page. Okay, so this is part of the $4 million quote-unquote cushion to be carried into 2018 because of the uncertainty at the state budget level right now. Everybody follow that? Then we had a discussion over what else has been put on hold that's over and above the $4 million. Has there been anything else done over and above the $4 million?
Yeah, that's budget item number, whatever it is.
It's,
Um,
is that
not
item
budget
number
item,
7?
Number 7, which,
That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure. Number 7, it's a one-page item. This is what it looks like. Okay, so this 4 million is over, this is over and above the 4 million. Is that a fair statement?
That's a correct statement.
Okay, and this goes, I think, to a question that Mr. Becker asked last week, right?
Mr. DeWitt, actually.
I think it was both of them.
Oh,
So
Okay.
truly what you're saying is it's 4 million, plus you have in reserve another 1,248,000,
correct,
so you're willing to cover like 5,248,000,
correct.
right?
If I may.
Yes, go right ahead.
But I thought the statement was last week that now that we knew we had 4 and change, that some of this 1.248 might be spent. Is that not correct?
The number that has been targeted as the most likely shortfall is 4.2. So when, and that's, and actually maybe it's even 3.7, because that's what our total state revenue are currently, right? 378 or something like that. That's actually in one of the handouts tonight. So, so for the purposes of that schedule, is okay if we lose all the revenue. Now, that does not account for a potential of push down of the teacher retirement board expenses.
Right.
But if we
Correct.
lose all the revenue, we need $4 million to make up the difference on the town side. So it's all that's necessary is to put out $4 million. And then now the administration, of course, realizing the number could be more than that $4 million because of push down, has also put these 3 items on hold, and has also asked the department heads to spend judiciously.
So, just so I'm clear. Last week, we were told the total available FY18 for budget support was 4.28 million. Now with the reduction tonight, it's about 4.2 even. You're saying that the administration is going to continue to hold off on this 1.248, which is paving, street sweeper, and IT capital. I thought there was library savings in there too, but those are the only 3 items that are being
The
held back
library
right now.
savings were included in the 4.2,
Because it was personnel.
because it was in that
Purely per- oh, okay.
621,000, I think 621
So
or
there was no
661.
savings from less hours? I thought that was a,
That was in the 621.
That was personnel savings, correct?
Correct.
Oh, God, okay. Okay. So, I guess, same question. So I thought what I heard last week was, well, now that we have 4.2, we're feeling better about it, we might start letting some of this 1.248 spend. That's not true.
No, well, let me try to be more clear, maybe. We have positions, open positions, that at 6:30, and we have position at the library and other places, but we're focused on the library right now. At 6:30, we had some open positions. In July, we had other people leave. There was a concern at one point that caused the administration, working with the library, to reduce hours. That would not have allowed any of those people to be hired. Okay, then as the favorable results came in and the potential to have funds available to support the 18 budget, the administration asked me to look and see what would be the cost and the savings of being able to bring the library back up to its hours. So the library savings that are in that $621,000 number are the savings of the positions in the library that are currently open, one of which remains open for the entire year, and the other of which come on board between the months of November and February. So some of those positions.
How much is that, what's that number? On library and park and rec separately? Because there's two, right?
Yes. The cost to open the library, in other words, the difference between if the positions were held open all year versus the amount open, the cost was $357,000, I believe, and the bringing the parks and rec people on, do you have that number? There he goes. Cost us about, because we had both of those, one was going to be vacant the whole time initially, no, excuse me, for half time, that was $33,000. So about because that person doesn't, oh wait a second, that person left in about $100,000 for the $90,000 to $100,000 on Parks and Rec.
So I think what you're saying is the savings the administration thought we were going to get from vacancy, 621,935.
That's not thought, that's solid.
Oh, that's solid.
That's solid. That's given the hiring schedule to open the library.
Not just the library, it's all of it.
Oh, it's all of it, right.
Right.
That's
These are the
that's
biggest
a
pieces.
solid number.
With the library at the current hours or the full hours?
With the library going to full hours on November 1st, or shortly thereafter.
That's the 621,935.
Well, it's included in that number.
Right, so the number you gave us the other day, if the library becomes open full-time in November, that number doesn't change, because it's already been factored in.
Correct statement.
Okay. So my question is, I thought I heard last week that there were other budget items that were held back by the first selectman. And I said, well, what are those items? You provided that tonight, 1.24, I'm sorry, I can't find my, 1.248, and that those might start to be expended because we're feeling pretty good about the 4.2. But that's not true now. You're still
No,
going to hold back that 1.
It's all true. The 4.2 is available
Right?
as on that schedule.
Can I take a
I
crack?
have to say, I'm not making my point.
All right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So last week, independent of the 1,248,000, right? We had a number thrown out. I'm going to use a round number. It's $4 million, right?
Right.
So we had $4 million that we said was taken up by carryover from the last 2 years, some hiring freezes, and some other items that were done.
And some delayed hiring, correct.
Delayed item, right? That totaled $4 million. Tonight, we've got a supplemental schedule that says, hey, by the way, we also have these items that are in essence in abeyance, and this is $1,248,000, which includes $1 million of paving and the street sweeper that Mr. Walsh asked about earlier, right?
Correct,
So that gives us up to savings of $5,248,000,
correct.
right? In addition, as Mr. Tetro helped clarify last week, as comparing what was going on with the state budget, the Board of Education is underspending their budget by $2 million to throw into the kitty to help offset the state's, the potential cutback from the state. Fair statement?
Yes,
Okay. Mr. Tetro, you're making faces, I don't mean to call you out, but fair statement, do you have a problem with what I'm saying? Is it accurate? It's accurate? You're fine. Okay. So that means we have $5,248,000 plus $2 million from the Board of Education. And again, I realize I'm using rough numbers, which means we have $5,248,000 that we're managing below our current budget. I'm sorry, $7 million. I said $5 million. $7,248,000 that we're managing below our current budget. Fair?
yes.
Okay. We have various state budget proposals. Neither any of them have been put into law yet, right?
Correct.
The proposal for the governor, or the proposal that's in front of the governor, passed by the legislature, we're fine, we're clear, we're actually $900,000 to the good, right?
Correct.
The one that the Democrats in the legislature put forward, including a $1.9 million hit on the teacher's pension, that has us down how much? Remind me last week?
2.4.
Was it, I can't,
Pretty sure it was
Yeah, it's 2.5.
2.830.
can I see that? Thank you.
Don't lose
Thank you,
it.
Chris. No, I will not lose it. So that's 2.8, right?
Paper.
And then the governor's proposal is, or the governor's executive order, not his proposal, is 6.1 million, right? Now, the governor's...
Right, and the governor's proposal could get worse.
Right, because the governor's proposal, A, as this goes forward, and again, in fairness to him, this is his executive order, right? His current executive order and all that does not include anything for the teacher's retirement contribution, which we've heard numbers at some point approaching like $7 million or something like that. At one point, I think that's well off the table, but.
Well, it was 9, but now it's,
It's
the latest.
1.9 there, but,
Right, it was 9 million eventually.
Yeah,
But the
exactly.
the 1.9 there is based upon 4.5, half of 4.56% of the salaries.
okay. So if it's 1.9, it could go as high as 3.8. Likelihood probably not there, right? But,
According to the governor's hope, it would double to 3.8 the following year.
right, exactly. So he's actually, under what he would like to do, we get hit by about $9 million. Is that a fair statement? I'm not talking likelihood that that happens.
Well, he can't, right, isn't that he can't under executive order, though?
Agreed.
Do that second part.
Right, the only
So
thing he
this
can
was
do is the
his-
6.1, maybe more.
Yeah, that was
no
the
budget,
worst
right?
case, zeroing us out all over the
Right.
place stuff,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, he could probably impact the town road aid. Hasn't yet, but apparently, but.
Right. Did
So
everybody follow
that could be another million.
Got it.
I'm
Yeah.
just trying to do the math to kind of get us all on the same page as to what we're looking at here as to the transfers, what we have available, how the town is managing it versus what our risk is.
My question, and again, I clearly am not articulating it well, that 1.24 million, that is the new schedule we found tonight, which is additional savings of the 4.2. That money is frozen today. That's not going to be spent?
That money is frozen until we get a governor's budget, until we get a state budget, excuse me.
Okay, because I thought I won't put words in it, I could have sworn that there was a statement made last week that that money will start freeing up because of the fact we had the 4.2. That was inaccurate. Or I
Correct.
remembered incorrectly. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the thing, right? There's been, I mean, I think this came up last week, there's been a lot of confusion about what items were, what, the definition of the freeze, the unfreezing of items, where we said,
The purpose of...
if everything settles up, what is ultimately then going to, be released and the timeline on doing that, right? So if a budget is set tomorrow, really not, but if a budget was set tomorrow and it didn't amount to more than the 4.2, would we say, geez, they wanted to get that street sweeper, we're not going to make them wait till next year, or are they going to pull that item out? Or the paving, we talked about the paving in the spring, they can encumber it, but it's also a lot of times a good time of year to be doing that. So would if the budget got settled up and the paving plants were still going and the pricing was favorable, would we release $1 million since we've covered ourselves on that 4.2, which may even exceed the amount of all of the adjustments at the state, depending upon whose plan ends up getting kicked out. And I think the thing we were trying to do, and this is something that happened during the budget process, was, there were decreases and increases and decreases all the way down, but a lot of people were trying to say, if at all possible, do the paving, do these things if all the transfers came to fruition. And you guys have done a lot of really good work and following through on some things that the board and, your department did last year. We did it again this year, just now, voting on all these transfers. The goal is to get the town to continue to run without all that pain, and some of that is making sure the roads are paved on the schedule.
Well, Dave, thank you. Said another way, I guess what I'm trying to wonder, and maybe this is part of what Dave's trying to figure out, what's the priorities for the administration as relates to these items if there is this money available to go back into the budget? We're talking about transferring funds over from this year. Once we transfer that over, right, it goes to your guys' court, because your budget's already been approved, and you can spend up to that amount on those items. Just like the Board of Education, they're dealing with a $2 million shortfall now within their own budget, and they're managing to that shortfall. But quite frankly, and I'm not saying they should, but they could spend that $2 million and just hand the bill over to the town and say, we spent up to our budgeted amount. Fair statement? Because we approve the budget collectively, all of us, at $2 million more than they're spending. So they could legitimately come and say, hey, we found $1 million of savings. We're not going to do this other $1 million of savings this year. I'm not saying that's the most prudent course that they would take, but they could. Legally, they could.
I'm not sure, because the $2 million that their savings has two potential sources of revenue, address two sources of revenue concern. One is the tuition on special ed, which is in their budget.
Yep.
Okay, and the other one is in the state grant directly to them.
So the
So-
question
so-
is,
so there-
maybe it's the $1 million that's in play, not the $1 million on the tuition, because the $1 million on tuition is really an expense, not a revenue item.
Right.
The $1 million on the other side, though, is a revenue item. And
But it's a
we
revenue item that goes into their budget directly.
agreed, but we approve their expenses. We approve their entire budget. We said you can spend up to that amount. I'm questioning.
Yes, that's okay, yeah. I mean, I would think they'd want to balance their budget, but I understand what you're saying.
Right. They could theoretically say, hey, if we've got this cushion here, globally on the town side, we've got $7 million, including there too, maybe we want to take $1 million back. And then you guys are sitting here saying, what can we use on our side? Right?
Right.
So the first question is, what can they do on the Board of Ed side? And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm raising the question. And secondly, what are the priorities on the town side to start putting these things back into the budget? Mr. Tetra?
One, I think the issue on the Board of Ed side, and it would have been good if they were still here when we had this discussion.
Yeah. I didn't ask him to leave. I'm just
One
saying.
is $1 million of the hit on their side is money that wasn't in their budget, and it wasn't in their budget for an expense or a revenue item.
Yep.
It was expenses they never paid for,
Yep.
but were paid by the state directly to the supplier or the vendor.
Yep.
Right? That's not happening that responsibility, after their budget is passed back to them. So that's where $1 million of it comes from.
Correct.
Then the other piece is the excess cost
Yep.
number, which is money that went from the state directly to the Board of Ed.
Right.
So in essence, the budget we approved was net of that.
It wasn't, though. It was the expense item. Have we
was-
had a legal opinion on this?
Excuse me?
Have we had a legal opinion on this?
I think it's just math.
I don't think so.
Yeah, the money transferred from the state directly to them. That's how it's worked. Let's go last year. Let's just talk about last year.
So is that not part of their gross spending that we approved? Is that what you're saying? It's not in
That's-
either side?
Yeah, let me just cover it as last year. I think we approve, if you go look at the budget book, I think we approve a net number for them.
Let's see. Yeah, I want to check it. I want to be
Yeah, please do, because I don't have the budget book in front of me,
Right.
but that number is a variable, which they've always had to make up. It goes right to them. It's not a revenue number for the town.
Right. I mean, we've never been in this position before, and I just want to make sure we're right, because we're making assumptions.
That makes sense, and that's why it may make sense to follow up with the Board of Ed directly
Yep.
to get that back.
Yep.
But I think we can look at last year to kind of prove out how that works, is all I'm saying.
No, I appreciate that.
This year, the numbers are in flux, but last year, we know how it actually turned out.
Yep. No, I appreciate it. Now, on the town side, what are the, do we know what the priorities are right now?
Yes, I mean, from the town side, our goal all along has been to minimize the impact on our residents as we go through this. So the handouts that we presented here showed that we basically were looking at restoring the library hours as well as the Parks and Rec positions. That still gave us $4.2 million of savings during this, projected savings during this year. And we had a flexible $1.2 million that we didn't have to spend today.
Can I ask a question on that?
Go ahead.
You just made a comment that can I see the breakout of last week's 4.2, Chris? So this 4.2.
The new numbers with the
Yeah, thank you. This 4.2, what you just said confuses me just a bit. Okay, so we have the potential union contract savings, we have the senior tax relief, collection ratio.
Well, based on the vote Monday night, those are real contract savings.
Yeah, that's fine. Specific plan vacancies, 621. Is that a net number of filling the library and park and rec positions? Or is that saying this is the savings including not filling the library and parks and rec positions?
That is the plan.
That's
that
the net
comprehends-
number.
So this is the net number?
Yep.
So when we're talking about, I added it up and said it's 7.248, right? That 7.248 is after we've added the library positions and the park and rec positions. Is that a fair statement? So this assumes we add those positions.
Yeah, that comprehends the plan of filling those positions, correct.
Okay. Thank you, because that wasn't clear to me last
I
week.
didn't get that last week either.
Okay. Everybody else, I'm sorry I just co-opted that conversation. I want to make sure we're all on the same page, so my apologies if I stepped on anybody. Please, any questions, comments? We have the first selectman up here as well.
But I don't think the question was answered. What is the priority?
Right.
The priority is what we laid out last week, Chris. We're
We've just been told
restoring.
we've just been told you're keeping another $1.24 million in some state that you're not spending. Last week, I could have sworn the statement was made that, well, now that we got the 4.2, maybe when it comes time to do paving, we can start letting paving go. That's not true.
Okay,
I think
let me,
what I
let me,
said's-
let me take it from the top. We have a plan in place that shows we have saved $4.2 million to account for any shortfall in revenue from the state. Are we clear on that? That's what that 4.2 shows.
Yes, it was
Okay,
clear the
so-
first 4 times.
So that
yes.
one's done.
I
Good.
got it.
We'll keep doing as much as we have to. The 1.2 million are additional items that we're not planning on spending right now, that we do plan on spending before the end of the year, but we have flexibility. And none of those items have to be spent by the end of the month or by the end of the week. We can basically spend that money on paving at any point this year we choose to, or not, based on what takes place here and based on what we're looking at next year.
So you have no priorities.
That is not what I said, Chris.
The question is...
just told you,
the
we're
question
filling
is
the
simple,
library
Mike.
position?
The question is simple, Mike.
Yep.
You saved 4.2 million.
Correct.
Plus 1.2.
Correct.
That's 5.4, right?
Yes. We have the
The question
flexibility to
is,
do that.
what is the first priority to fund when when you realize that you don't have to pay 5.4 million? That's what I thought the question was. What's the priority when we realize that that 5.4 number is really 3 or 2 or whatever?
It would be on the 1.2 there. The items that are on hold, but we've identified are not part of the 4.2 million.
So the paving, the street sweeper, and the IT capital.
Correct.
Anybody else?
Well, I understand why the $49,000 number has to be transferred. Is there any reason the other amounts need to be transferred tonight? Or can we make that decision at a
I
later
need to
point?
close my books, yes.
Can we keep your books open? Can we ask you to keep our
No, the
books open?
state has a requirement by the end of December. I need to have my financials to the auditors October 15th.
Well, we have hang on, we have a meeting next week.
Yeah.
We can do that transfer next week, right?
Technically, yes, I can't close Munis rollover and I can't release any funds, but as these vendors are waiting for their payments, but yes.
Yeah, if we had to see what the state does, because they're trying to hit a October 1st date. I don't know that they'll hit it, but they're trying to. We could actually do this next Tuesday.
Yeah, at this point, the state, I think, is just trying to resolve the hospital situation by October 1st. I don't think they're talking about having a budget
Is that today?
resolved.
Because I talked to a state rep early this morning, and they said they're still, as far as they know, shooting for October 1st. That was very early this morning, so I could be,
Yeah, I haven't heard that they're calling them all back in for a budget vote. So you could
I
have...
haven't heard that
You could
either.
have much better information than I do. I'm just reading the tea leaves in the Capitol Report blog.
I think that's probably accurate, but let's go with positive vibes here. What does anybody think?
Well, what's the other option? This money flows down to to our fund balance, correct? And then depending on what the state does, whether it be in October or whether it be in April, we move the money out of fund balance up. Why can't that happen?
What do you, say that again? How would you move it out of fund balance?
Can't we take a transfer out of the fund balance?
No, you would have to do a budget. You would have to appropriate a line, use of fund balance, which is not looked upon well from the rating agencies,
Right.
because you're using fund balance.
Right.
So if the governor signs the budget the way it is, none of this is necessary, right? Because we get all the money. If the governor signs the bipartisan General Assembly budget that's before him, we actually get $900,000 more than it's in our budget, correct?
I believe that's what the reports last week showed.
Yeah, it's our best estimate of what's in the budget, correct.
So, here's the issue, or the question, right? If we don't do a transfer, and we can wait to do the transfer, I know it's painful, we could wait to do the transfer until next Tuesday at our regularly scheduled meeting. If we do it then, maybe, maybe not, we might have better available information. I agree with your statement, I don't think they get it done by next Tuesday. Okay, that's number one. Number two, as Mr. Walsh points out, we do nothing, don't transfer it, and then if it hits the fan, we have to pull money out of the general fund, and Ms. Bossy, I think you're absolutely correct, that's not looked favorably upon, and it's not what I would want to do. Right, let me be I'll go very much on the
I
record.
think that'd have to go, if it's doable even, it'd have to go through all three bodies.
It might, I don't even know.
Pretty sure it would.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, and I don't think that's appropriate. The other item would be, we vote tonight on some amount to transfer over, correct? And if the budget, the legislature's budget that's on the governor's desk or soon to be on the governor's desk, whatever it is, does get passed and we get the money, the only thing that happens with these funds is they flow directly through to the general fund anyway. Nobody can use them and spend them because they're in debt service. we're not going to have that debt service expense, so it eventually ends up at the bottom line anyway. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, by approving this transfer, you give us the flexibility of managing this budget. If a budget approves, be it this one or some hybrid that gives us more than we expect, then we don't need to use this money. This would be surplus for this year. Lets us count on moving that into next year and helps us adjust next year's tax rate too. So it can have a double-year impact on that. But it provides the maximum flexibility in terms of how to manage this year and minimize the impact on our residents.
Well, it's also very similar to what we did last year.
Correct.
And I don't have, me personally, speaking for myself, I don't have a problem with that. And I want to be careful the way I phrase this because I want to be clear in my message. My concern is this, right? There's been, first of all, I think restoring the library hours is great. I think the park and rec positions are fine because I think they're revenue generating and I know that they've been struggling without those positions. As a manager, as an operator, I'm concerned about hiring people, right? And then having it hit the fan with the state budget and having to lay off people in the spring that you just hired. That just seems cruel because the first ones that are going to go are the last ones in the door. So my question, and I don't know the answer to this, is it possible to do these things, to open the library, without actually hiring more staff, but using existing staff and using the funds to actually pay overtime or whatever, if it's that important to keep the library open, versus actually going out and adding to headcount right now on open positions, given the uncertainty that's out there? That's my question.
We live in an uncertain world, and I think that if you go back to last spring, we had a $9 million number that we were looking at as potentially a hit. All right? This board, along with the other boards, actually my compliments to this board, tried to provide an $825,000 or $1 million buffer as part of that got cut by the RTM. We've been able to go back in and account for that and potentially restore that if we need to.
But that's not really an answer to my question.
No,
My
well, it is
question-
from a standpoint we've been hiring people all the time, Tom.
No, my question was, can you run the library with existing staff working overtime versus adding to headcount when you might have some very difficult situations in the spring, depending on what happens at the state level? So if you hired people 6 months ago, great, they got a year and a half in, I'll feel bad for them as well. But if we have difficult decisions to make in March, are you setting this up? So can the library operate at more hours, right, at its old hours, without hiring additional people?
Yep. It may or may not.
Can we look at that? I just think I don't think it's wise right now. And I'm not against reopening it, and I'm not against, that's not my point at all.
Yeah.
One
I think-
of the issues that would come up in that situation is union issues. There would be a union grievance.
About overtime?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to fill positions. I mean, you can't hold off forever. In other words, it's...
Go ahead.
I just have, first of all, I know that the library has done overtime with their existing staff when they have longer hours open, but I thought the open positions were not to cover the additional hours the library might be open, but rather to fill other needs that have nothing to do with the being open longer.
No.
That was my understanding.
Basically, the hiring freeze impacted the library more than other departments. In order to account for the fewer positions, they went back and adjusted hours.
There's a couple of
So
things.
is-
I'm sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead. I thought you... Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, there's programs. Right now, there's no teen librarian, for example. And also...
So that doesn't impact hours. That's
No,
program.
but some of the programs,
I recall that as
the
Miss Marion.
The second part is except for the town librarian, everyone from the deputy librarian down spends time at the circulation desk. Not because to be part of the group, but because for scheduling purposes. Because
All I'm s- yeah, and all I'm saying is-
there's
Look, having managed a business through an economic downturn, it's hard to say go hire staff as the first thing out of the gate before you know what your revenues are going to be. And maybe you can buy a little time through working overtime for a few weeks. And again, it's not what your priority is. I had no problem with the prioritization of the library and Park and Rec. My problem is I wouldn't be hiring people until I knew what we were getting from the state. And if we could reopen it on October 1st or whatever the heck it is, with overtime for a while and buy time until the state is ready, that's what my recommendation would be.
Yeah. Tom, I think a number of us manage businesses during uptimes and downtimes.
Yeah.
All right,
I'm not
that's
saying I'm
one.
the only one, trust me.
Right. Second, you know, we're going to have a tough state situation for years to come.
Right, so adding
What we've done
headcount-
is account for the revenue loss with a buffer, and I think it's very reasonable to bring those people back on and restore the library hours and get our Parks and Rec program back up to because we're basically pushing Parks and Rec to generate more revenue.
Right.
That implies we're going to have top-quality programs being run from there, and we need those people on board to do that.
But isn't the library open with those hours now without that head count? And not necessarily saying, right, haven't we added, we're able to run the library with the head count we have. It may not be easy necessarily, but when talking about the flexibility, I mean, and we, as a town, we're talking about trying to restructure and work with Board of Ed, and all these conversations are going on.
the library hours are currently reduced.
But they're about to go back.
When we bring, as we bring these positions back, Dave.
Not until
But not all of them. You mentioned some of them aren't coming until February.
We have,
The hours will be phased back in
Maybe
as they
that's-
come back in.
So you're going to phase them at that point until February. So when you say that they're being restored, you're not fully restoring them until February?
It's the library's going to restore the hours as quickly as they can, based on as quickly as they can replace these bodies.
So, to some extent, I think it would be helpful to clarify that, because I think there's a lot out there about hours,
Yeah,
what
as
the personnel counts.
the people aren't going to come on tomorrow morning. It's going to take a while to bring them on, and as soon as they can be brought on, the library is committed to restoring those hours.
And then, it just seems that adding the head count while we're talking about the restructuring, you don't know, now you may bring somebody in, they may have a title, they may have a salary, all these other things, where it turns out when you start to look at it under restructuring, they should have been in a different role.
We're not going to have that kind of,
Something different.
we're not going to have that kind of restructuring in the next year.
But as soon as you hire him in, you start to lose the flexibility to be able to do that, don't you?
We have to provide, you know, these are services that we want to provide to our residents, Dave. We're not, the type of restructuring, if we have to do that, that's going to be a much bigger issue that's going to take several years to implement. And we're not going to put these positions on hold for several years.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Becker. Mr. DeWitt? Anything? Mr. Brown? Anybody else? Mr. Walsh?
So we can wait till next week. Is that,
If someone wants to make a motion and hold this over till the next meeting, we can.
I don't mind doing the 49,000 right now, but I think the rest should wait.
Do you
I
need
mean-
the 49,000 right now, or could we wait till next Tuesday? Does it make any difference, Caitlin?
I mean, every day that this lingers, it's not good, but no, that's fine. That could wait.
Okay, can we also, if it was held over to next Tuesday, do you guys think you'll have any further information on that one accrual? That might affect this number?
well, I know that it'll affect the number, but the resolution that you passed in when you did the schedules,
Yeah.
allows the town to make that adjustment. I think the actual
Well,
numbers...
yeah, but if you make that adjustment on the encumbrances and the reappropriation, then you got to cut something else that's already planned for, right?
That actually affects this schedule as well.
Right, it affects this schedule.
Because I used all of the extra budgetary money in the legal department.
To calculate
fund-
this.
Yeah, but there's still enough money in the legal department to cover it.
She just said there's not.
Yes, there's the budget, the favorable in the legal department is $174,000.
It's 150, that would change the schedule a lot. 'Cause I
Yeah,
have 50
it's got to
right here
change
and
the
then
schedule.
From here, so then they would be over budget if I expense them another 55, or whatever. the
Right,
number is.
it impacts
Okay.
the bottom half of the schedule,
Yeah.
not the top half.
No, what I'm saying
It
is
would
it's gotta
affect
come out.
that legal fee,
Right, the bottom
93.
half, not the top half.
Right,
Right.
It's got to, it gets, it has to be adjusted and accounted for somewhere.
yes.
That's
Whatever the resolution is, whatever the number.
Right, there's two parts to the schedule, as you just pointed out.
Right.
The top part is the 49,000 coming out of legal to cover the overages.
Right.
That will not be impacted by waiting or not waiting. That is set in stone. The bottom half, which is the amount that would go into the debt service,
Would be adjusted.
readjusted, and that adjustment is available to myself, actually, I guess, because of the resolution that you guys just passed when you passed
No,
the schedules.
But it's not, it won't be accounted for in the appropriate year then, will it? Because it's actually, I'm concerned as well about the year. I mean, it's an expense for 2017.
That's where we will put it. That was that resolution that we talked about earlier, that you gave us the
I
authority.
understand that. I did, we did, okay? But that authority equated to those schedules. Those schedules were made up of specific line items that we approved to be carried over. In order to pay for that, whatever the amount comes to, you would have to back things out of those schedules, so those guys might not get the truck. I throw that out there, right? If we take it out of the 1.5, right,
Okay.
then it doesn't affect any of your appropriations, and it doesn't affect your reappropriations. If we take it out of this, it affects all of them, or something.
The 93 would become 38 on the bottom half of that schedule.
Right, so I'd rather take it out of the 1.5 than take it out of,
Right. And then the 1380 becomes 1325.
so can we make a motion to carry over these transfers to date certain, which is our meeting next week, which is October 2nd? And adjust the numbers accordingly?
Is your meeting Monday?
It's Tuesday.
Believe the second is Tuesday, Monday?
Thank you, that's what I was saying. Okay, October 3rd. Thank you. We could meet Monday. No, we'll do it October 3rd.
Board of Selectmen is meeting Monday.
Do we have a second to my motion? We'll take Mr. Brown. Does any comment, questions, concerns on my motion? No? Okay. All in favor of holding this over to next week? Opposed, abstentions? We'll hold it over next week. And Caitlin, we apologize for any inconvenience on that. I think it's the right move, but I understand it's
It is.
holding you up, and I'm sorry for that. Thank you, Mr. Tetra. Okay. Item number 4, to review the current status of the town's pension and OPEB funds. And we did have a conflict with the meeting tonight, so Mr. Vahey, I believe, is at the pension board meeting, and I think we knew that, and we said Mr. Mayor can speak to this item.
I wrote some notes here. It was,
And by the way, by these guys, I meant Mr. Bartlett in the back of the room. So go ahead.
So it was a good year. The total return gross 10.7%, net 10.34% for the fiscal year. All asset classes, with the exception of commodities, which is theoretically a diversifier with low correlation to other assets.
Are we doing OPEB or are we doing pension
Yeah.
first?
Again, did you steal that there?
I'm talking about the pension returns.
Pension returns? Okay.
Pension, thank you. Go ahead.
So basically, everything did well, as, you know, as indicated by the 10.7%. The ones that did the best, as pointed out there, were the growth-oriented equities. The U.S. equity returned 19%, non-U.S. equity 18.9%, private equity 14%, real estate 12%. The trailing 3 years is 4.61%. The trailing 5-year is 8.28%, 7.93 net of fees. Trailing 7 years is 8.94 net of fees. Total fund is above benchmark for the 3, 5, and 7-year periods. One of the hedge fund holdings that we had, DGAM, closed the fund this year because they lost their largest participant. Those funds were moved to Invesco as of, I think it was March 24th was the initial date. Invesco is a multi-asset class absolute return strategy, and it's intended as a replacement for hedge funds because theoretically it has the same low volatility and low correlation to their assets and low beta, more transparency, and lower fees. It's basically considered a diversifier. That's pretty much.
Mr. Mayor, there's a couple instances where the amounts, now forget BlackRock for a second, but there's a couple of other instances where amounts are getting near that 10% mark, and we have kind of a policy in place to not go above that. Are you guys looking at moving money in those accounts?
Yeah, well, we look at this when we make our cash flow from excluding investment income. In other words, the cash flow is negative, so we sell assets to pay benefits. So when we sell assets, we look at where we sit to help determine what to sell.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if you look at Euro Pacific.
Right, it's 11% or something like that.
Right. You look at Montgomery, you look at CX, right? They're all getting close to that 10%, which we're trying to avoid, right? So are you looking to diversify them?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When we raise funds, that's generally how we determine. It's one of the parameters, one of the decision-making concepts that goes into where we raise funds to pay benefits.
Is to,
And
what,
the-
take the funds out of there?
Take the
when-
funds out of the ones that are
And that's the
over that
current
10%.
plan?
Yes.
Questions, comments? Mr. Walsh?
In regards to the returns on this, under commodities, we continue to have losses in commodities, not only for this fiscal year, the last 36 months, the last 60 months, but even going back 7 years. At some point, do you just change your percentage that you have in them or get out of it? And has there been conversations on the board about doing that? Because basically, for 7 years, we've had losses, and it doesn't look like it's changing.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of conversation on the board about that. The traditional strategy in diversification is you want some contra assets, some things that are that protect you, and when the equities, when you have big inflation, equities might not be as strong. Commodities at that point are strong. So that's the purpose of diversification. So we got the people on the board that say we need to stay diversified. We understand that when we accept the losses during that diversification, for those items that have low correlation with other assets. And other people say, but wait a second, it's losing money, let's get out. So it's a constant discussion.
Well, it just seems as though, I understand diversification, I understand things go up and down, but when you see an asset class that's been for 7 straight years, we've lost 5%, and we've watched it go in the last year, it's been 4.6. Last 36 months, it's been a 15%. it's, and I asked this to Brian Vahey the last time, he didn't really have anything to say about it, and we just keep, every quarter this comes up, and every quarter, I always look at it, I'm like, I bet there's going to be a loss in commodities, and I'm not even a finance expert, investment expert, and boom, there it is.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times you got to get hit in the head before you start realizing maybe we should just, until we start seeing gains
Right, well,
in
theoretically-
the marketplace, get out, take the 3%, make money on that 3%, put it someplace else where we're putting it, and just go to zero for a while and change the way you're going to diversify. It's not a lot, it's 3%.
Right. Yeah, if you look at the markets, it's interesting from two perspectives. One, the whole concept of diversification is to have things that have low correlation with each other, so when things happen, you still got something in there that's going to work well for you. And one of the I think it was yesterday when the news came out, the Fed was surprised that the rate of inflation is not as great as it was, because people have been expecting inflation to come up, which theoretically means some commodities start, producing a return. And finally, the other argument for staying in there is if you look at the market and the gains in the market, regardless of what asset class it is, it's the gains are a very few number of days. It's not like the market generally goes up, like boom. It's like, so if you're out of the market a period of time and all of a sudden commodities move, then you end up missing, the move. So those are the arguments to use to stay in, and then the arguments to use to get out are the ones that you verbalized.
It just seems like on those few days, over the last 7 years, we've lost.
Yep. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's good catch. Can we ask Mr. Vahey when he comes back, let's talk about that a bit more and understand what your guys' conversations are about that?
Can
And-
we, through
ahead.
you, Mr. Chairman, maybe we can say that's a concern of our board?
Yep.
And whether that could be brought up as a discussion point
I agree.
during your meetings.
As well as the going over 10% in certain areas or close. Anybody else have anything on the pension items? Seeing none, let's go to OPEB. This is usually a quicker discussion.
Yeah, OPEB, as you know, is basically in pretty much index funds, and the index funds, last 12 months, 12%, last 36 months, 4.8.
And we haven't been able to diversify as much just because of the numbers that we're dealing with here.
Correct. And we haven't diversified into, for example, commodities, real estate, but we're,
Any other questions?
But he did mention we were getting very close to being able to do some more diversification. We're right right on
I
the
think I
cusp,
said 2 to
right?
3 years.
So we're still another two-ish out. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought the number was like 50 to 75
I think it was
million
50 million.
A minimum
Yeah.
of 50
50-ish,
million.
yeah.
And we're at like 35. Anybody else?
Yeah.
All right, seeing none. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns? Any new communications, Mr. Mayor? We have some follow-up items. We have that item on our agenda for next
One
week.
from myself. One of the things we don't have is a debt service policy, a formal debt service. We certainly have a commitment not to be 10%, et cetera. And we haven't addressed one of the items is the waterfall. We haven't addressed that.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, we're still,
Yeah.
7 and 8 together, aren't we?
Yeah, no, we did 7. We're doing 8. My apologies. Yeah, go ahead.
But back to your question, so I'm kind of dressed, so I'd like to have even if it's a simple debt service policy that I'm going to bring before the board for approval. If you want to have a committee at that time and, elaborate on it, expand it, enhance it,
What's your
that's
timing on
obviously-
that?
I'm hoping to bring it to you like next month. Excuse me,
Yeah, November.
November.
Yeah, no, that'd be.
It's not going to be a, elaborate, but it's going to pretty much cover the intent of what we're trying to,
I think that's
what we're
great.
trying to do.
Send it to us. And let's go on. My apologies. I am exhausted tonight. Item number 8, to review and discuss the town's bonding requirements and estimated impact on debt service levers over the next several years. related to the non-recurring capital and capital projects planning document. Holdover item from last week. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yes, so basically,
Here.
aside from a few people being very embarrassed that that $3 million got missed, we did a couple things. One, we sent out emails and all department heads. Is there anything else that we missed? Is there anything that you have confirmed that no one else had anything that wasn't listed? And then we added the $3 million. We also, if you remember, I pointed out that there's supposed to be on the pumpers from the fire, they're supposed to be every other year, and in the out years, in 25, they were subsequent years, sequential years, excuse me.
Yep.
So we corrected that as well. So going to page Exhibit 2 of the document,
I
you
do
see
have to say,
basically the
these
result of the
waterfall
changes.
copies are awful.
They're bigger
What-
this time.
What happened?
Oh, I don't, the waterfall copies?
Yeah, they're terrible.
Mine's good. And size-wise, or what? It's bigger than the last time.
That's everything
Oh.
wise.
The quality of the print, I guess.
The quality is terrible.
Copy.
I don't like the numbers either, but.
Anyway, Exhibit 2 is easy to read.
All right.
So you can see with those changes, the capital plan, the revised capital plan, still versus the September 16 capital plan, has savings in $13 million. And the total capital, net capital, has an increase of $5 million. That $13 million savings, obviously, that's through 26. Then there's a $13 million cost going to 45. So the net is virtually zero.
So we
And that's-
go up next year under this current plan, which will be pretty solid. We go up about another $500,000. No, we go up, yeah, $500,000 to $600,000 in debt service year over year, right?
Right.
Between 18 and 19.
Correct. And then we have a new Exhibit 6. What we did there, at the chair's request,
Thank you.
was we included a column with the WPCA debt service, and then recalculated the debt service as a percent of budget.
What are the assumptions? I guess I can read it down at the bottom. It's, did you put everything in here?
Everything is in there. The assumptions is 2% budget increases per year, is the basic assumption.
Right, so we get tight in 2021 and 2022.
Right.
Oh, we get very tight in, yeah, no, okay, got it.
Yeah. 2022 is 9.57.
The only concern is some of these later years are probably unrealistic in that we always see
Sure.
those and then lots of things get ordered in, so. That 9.57
yeah.
year could push closer to 10 when projects get dropped in.
Yeah, and the good news is most of the Board of Ed, major Board of Ed projects are, and there's payments being made, but yes, that
Yeah, well,
does reach.
we're not seeing is in any time in the in years.
And the
real
phone
savings
system
on
is
this.
already in there. I mean, I don't know, unless you want to redecorate my office, that'd be a good thing. I don't see any big things coming up.
But
And
the
then,
town, I mean, like this, the town is,
hall.
I mean, the Board of Ed has had a lot of the big stuff for a while.
yeah,
The town is now probably
well,
right
so
on Town Hall. I mean, there's some other
town
buildings.
hall is in there already. The
Okay.
phone system's in there already. The obviously the
Okay.
clubhouse is in there now.
Yeah.
Thank you for providing this, and thank you for doing the percentages.
And then if you look at 6A is also in
Can
the
you stay on
schedule.
6 for a second, but WPCA, what the sewer plant and the upgrade's not in here, correct?
I think it is in here.
It's in the schedule. It's not in the waterfall, but it's in the numbers that, on the schedule we just looked at, Schedule 6.
It's in 6.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Which
all
shows-
those numbers in regarding the $60 million are in here?
Yes.
Okay.
Any?
And then 6A shows what our total debt balance is
Yep.
with the combination of the town bonds and the WPCA bonds.
Yeah.
So you can see
Thank you.
from $183 million balance, $183 million balance, and for year-end 2014, goes down until and then goes boom in 2020 when the WPCA kicks in.
Yep.
It goes up to 204 million, and then starts going down again.
Okay.
And we have there is a WPCA meeting tonight as well, and they were presented with a schedule. I assume they have been by now. It's 10 o'clock. They were presented with a schedule that shows what the rate increase requirements would be for them to fund their fund balance
Entirely.
entirely. To fund their debt service, I'm sorry.
Right. Okay. Any other questions from board members on this? Thank you for updating it. Most appreciated. And my apologies for forgetting about it. Anybody else have anything? Any members of the public have anything? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion. We'll go to Mr. DeWitt. Do I have a second? We'll go to Mrs. Esma. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We're adjourned, everybody. Good night.